So that's the president in the shot there, greeting the wife, done with his State of the Nation address. This is his last but one State of the Nation address before he leaves as president of the Republic. And the state isn't great. This current state of the economy isn't a great one. He himself talks about the challenges that the current economy is facing. And he prefixes his entire address by giving us a sense that he is going to be focusing almost exclusively on the economy. And he makes the point that he isn't doing so to the neglect of the other parts of the economy, but because of where we are, it had to be done. You understand that?
Yes, I do, Evans. But you see, when the president says he's going to focus on the economy because of where we find ourselves, unfortunately, the president spent a lot of time telling us what the state of this country prior to 2020. He spent a lot of time telling us some of the things that he had done in the past. Now, to be very honest with you, at this moment, look, I have the full statement, the speech of the president now. If I were to go into it right now, and we'll go into it shortly.
Yeah.
Look at the time spent on talking about, for instance, the IMF deal.
Yeah.
Now, the IMF deal is one of the things that holds the key to our survival as a people today.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Just imagine the time spent on the IMF program. The president talks about shortage of vaccines. He repeats the Minister of Health's, statement that there's a global decline in vaccination. By the way, a decline in vaccination is different from shortage in vaccines. Yes, there's a decline in vaccination, but in the world, it is not just because of shortage in vaccines. So what we are facing today is different from the global picture. Let us not pretend. And this morning I was reading, on the SMS, for instance, the analysis that CNN did, that in America, for instance, so because of COVID-19 and the schools are not going to school, the schools are not reopening, they are doing a lot of virtual learning, and so immunization as, a criteria for schooling, for instance, is no longer there. Some, persons because of COVID-19 did not take their children. All of these things are there. That's not our situation. So when the president comes, repeats what the health minister has been talking about, and then moves straight into, we're trying to get it as a matter of emergency. Yeah, emergency. But what Ghanaians would want to know is when. And so when the health minister, for instance, says that, very soon, in a few weeks, we would get it. Few weeks is not, if I come back and I say after a few weeks, what is the definition of few weeks? How would you know? And so, look, I think that, again, in the period that we find ourselves, the president failed to actually focus more on where we want to go as a people, how we intend to do that. This, for me, looked like a campaign platform that the president just touted his government's achievements. This, for me, does not look like a State of the Nation address. And the president, in starting, makes the point that, it's important for us to know where we were in the past, where we are today, and where we're going, and some of the things that we'd have to do to get there. Unfortunately, majority of his statement was about where we were in the past. First of all, the bad in the past, the good in the past, little about the bad today, and what we can do to make it better tomorrow.
And you made the point about the vaccines. And by the way, this country has been dealing with a lot over the last year, with the economy being the prime focus. But in the last few months, but particularly in the last 2 weeks, the focus has shifted to the vaccine shortage, which is in a major crisis we've never had before in my lifetime. And the most important expectation of parents, the health professionals in the sector, listening to the president today, was to give us clarity on when the vaccines, the child immunization vaccines will arrive. And you're right. Today, the president moved away completely from giving us a timeline for the arrival of the vaccines. Remember that the Ghana Health Service had told us that expect it in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
The health minister held a press conference yesterday and says a few weeks. The president today, in the State of the Nation address, and he is the ultimate authority in this country. And so when he speaks, that's final. Not even the health minister can contradict him. Didn't use the word weeks, days. He says, to quote him, steps are now being taken to ensure that the stocks of these vaccines are procured and supplied as a matter of urgency. So he's moved away from the talk about weeks, 2 weeks, few weeks, to a matter of urgency. Again, that offers a bit more, less clarity than a few weeks is a few weeks, right? But when you say matter of urgency, it doesn't even tell you anything than to say, so specifically, what are you doing to make this a matter of urgency? Normally, when countries introduce the word emergency, it triggers a certain mobilization of resources and a series of clear actions to get an issue resolved instantly.
Yeah.
So I was expecting once you make that point to break it down, are we now released emergency funding for it? Have we secured, for example, what we are doing with the fuel, breaking the protocol and the mold of getting gold, it is an emergency measure, right? You are taking extraordinary steps to get a problem fixed. I didn't hear the extraordinary steps. So when the president says a matter of urgency, what constitutes that exactly? I didn't hear that. And as we speak today is the most important matter. And it talks about the fact that, we didn't have deaths yet from the lack of vaccinations. But yesterday when I listened to the health minister, I was making the point. So are we waiting for the deaths before we fix this problem? But you make another very important point, Winston, that the president spent today, this is the longest time I believe, and we have to measure this, I'm trying to measure it, the longest time I believe the president has spent explaining away the economic crisis.
Yeah.
We've heard him say the government have said Ukraine and the pandemic, but this time he spent a considerable amount of time talking about that. Now, do you know the thing that I find interesting? IMF, you said rightly, it's the IMF program, it's going to be our savior. It's going to make or break this economy. If we miss the march, we are in apocalyptic territory. You know how many times the president mentioned IMF, the acronym IMF? 6 times.
Yeah.
He mentioned Ukraine twice, and he mentioned pandemic in the context of explaining away the crisis 5 times. If you add the 2, that's 7 times he's mentioned Ukraine and the pandemic in the context of explaining the economic crisis. The solution, which is the IMF, he mentions it 6 times. So the one extra tells you where the focus was today. The focus was on trying to tell you it's not my fault.
But you see, that's what we've moved beyond. We've moved beyond it's not my fault. Because today, look, and I've said this before, today, what we want as a people is how we intend to get out of this problem. Yes, we find ourselves in the problem already. Enough of the it is not my fault. What we want to know is how do we get out of the problem? And so when the president, for instance, says that, well, the IMF is not the panacea to solving all our problems, there are other things that we have to do. Let me just read a bit about when the president talks about the IMF. He gets to talk about the IMF, and then he says that. Well, let me just read it. It says, yes. However, in addition to engagement with the IMF, with the fund, we're also seeking and implementing some original and innovative ideas to try to solve our problems. For example, he talks about the gold purchase program by the Bank of Ghana and gold for oil policy. These policies aimed at achieving 2 results that are critical to the health of our economy. Then he moves into pricing for fuel and the fact that his government is being able to do well in reducing the prices of fuel. Well, I mean, look, when you have an opportunity at the State of the Nation address, today, last year when the Vice President addressed, had an address on the economy, he talked about one simple thing, that the state of the economy is what you feel in your pocket. Today, what Ghanaians would want to know. So beyond these things, put figures to it. Mm-hmm. Okay, put figures to it. You're telling us, for instance, that one of the things you want to do is, beyond, an IMF program, you also want to improve or increase, per capita income from 2,500 to 4,000 in line with the Ghana Beyond Aid. Okay, that's what the president talks about, for instance. So you put a figure to it, and then we can come back and, for instance, say, what did you do about that? The point here is that what are the other policies that you're talking about? You've talked about the gold for oil and the Bank of Ghana purchasing gold. Beyond these things, how about expenditure cuts, for instance? what are you doing to ensure that there is, we're able to, first of all, block the leakages and the wastage within the country? These are things we should be talking about. And these are things we should be talking about, putting values to them so we can have a conversation. Look, these are the things that actually sends some kind of a good signal to the market. You just don't speak to me and tell me I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do this, I'll do that. At the end of it all, I don't really know what to pick out of it.
I want to take it to Parliament now. My parliamentary correspondent, Kojo Yankson, is now talking to Samuel Blakwa.
Continuous reliance on global phenomenon when other countries are not in the mess that we find ourselves in. We are the only country going through a debt restructuring program. The only country that cannot pay pensioner bondholders. Look at what they had to go through. I mean, how did the president feel having his colleagues, his peers, senior citizens, go through all of that ordeal, fight for their lives so that their life savings will be protected? And the president says, let's blame COVID, let's blame Russia, Ukraine. I am also disappointed that the president, on the vexed issue of shortage of childhood vaccines, he did not apologize to mothers, he did not apologize to the children, and then he did not give us specific timelines. Look, just throwing words about that, oh, there will be an urgent response, emergency response. That's not what we want, specific timelines. Because, look, that is a national emergency. It is a national disaster. And I am disappointed that we didn't hear from the president issue specific instructions and provide specific timelines. I must also state that the president's claim that they did not engage in reckless borrowing is so preposterous. So ridiculous.
You borrowed and the NDC.
Look, we all know the numbers. We are in this house. We approved these facilities. At the time the NDC was leaving office, the entire public debt was 122 billion. These are figures confirmed by the World Bank, by the IMF, and by our own Bank of Ghana. As we speak, public debt has exceeded 600 billion Ghana cedis. So you cannot hide behind legacy debt or ancestral debts. The fact of the matter is that you have borrowed so much and there's very little to show for it. Look at the 60 to 70 billion that President Mahama borrowed. You can see the Terminal 3, you can see UGMC, our only quaternary hospital in Ghana, first ever in the history of our country. You can see the Ridge Hospital, you can see the Circle Interchange, the Kaswa Interchange, so many projects, but you can see where the money has gone. And let me also add that I am disgusted that President Akufo-Addo is still a clearing agent, and he's brought that to Parliament, saying that COVID funds have not been misappropriated. When there is an audit report, which we are currently in possession of in this house and we are reviewing, that audit report confirms that there has been massive misappropriation, misapplication, blatant corruption, thievery, and then the president comes here and issues what is clearly.
His health minister and his finance minister have adequately responded to the queries that were sent. So there's nothing wrong. If anybody thinks something wrong, they should bring contrary facts. He's right.
They have not. You see, I'm not surprised that this is a president whose Attorney General wrote to the Auditor General asking him not to publish the audit findings. I would have thought that the president will be telling us today that he has reprimanded the Attorney General, and that all of those who have been indicted in the audit report will be sanctioned. Look, this is a president who promised us that he will protect the public purse, that he will make corruption high risk, that he will adopt the ANAS principle. I'm so disappointed, like most Ghanaians. Let me also say finally that I take judicial notice that for the first time, we don't hear the president talk about his priority project, the National Cathedral project. I mean, that is a project that, by our analysis, will cost us over $1 billion. I think that the president is beginning to wake up to reality, that all of the scandals that have dominated this project. He can no longer be buoyant about it. He can no longer be associated about it. And I'm not surprised that the president has, for the first time, virtually avoided this project like a plague. That gives us clear indication that the probe that is about to happen must continue, and this parliamentary probe must be thoroughly done, and all of those who have engaged in these massive diversions, this blatant, corruption that has been associated with this project, breach of our procurement laws, breach of the Constitution, all of those people must be brought to book and must be sanctioned. And really, my brother, if you were looking forward to hear a president who has turned the corner and who is now willing to take responsibility and to chart a new path forward and to revive this terrible economy that he has really created, you were disappointed today, just as I am disappointed. And really, this is
before I let you go, your party has put out a statement asking none of your colleagues to travel, don't go to your constituencies to campaign. Campaign has been suspended. What is going on? What is happening in Parliament that your party needs all of you to be here? Just briefly.
No, I believe strongly that it's because of the CI. Remember that we need the numbers. Remember also that the ministerial nominees, remember the appointments committee report is outstanding. We have to take a vote on them. We have taken a decision that the president must cut down, and that's one of the things that I'm disappointed I didn't hear him talk about, reducing the size of government. You heard the German ambassador, and as ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, let me say that I'm disappointed that the president took a swipe at the diplomatic community. Look, you're going to them to beg, you're going to them for debt cancellation. They have a right to tell you that, look, you must put your house in order first. So taking this swipe at the diplomatic corps was totally uncalled for and absolutely unnecessary. So the statement by our General Secretary is because we need the numbers to make sure that those ministers do not go through, and also the CI is not late.
Thank you very much, Honorable Blackwell. Let me talk to the ranking member on the Health Committee, The president spoke about your pet peeve about the vaccines. He says it's regrettable and government is doing all it can to resolve the situation. Are you satisfied with the answers the president?
I'm disappointed in you. What did the president say? What did you understand the president?
He says the situation is regrettable.
The president wasn't lamenting like you and I. He was virtually lamenting. Must the president be lamenting? Okay, the president doesn't appreciate the urgency of the moment. Children are being born almost every day. They are deprived of getting vaccinated. And we're expecting the president to be telling us that, look, we are taking delivery of vaccines today. Tomorrow, we are starting the distribution of these vaccines, and children in this country will have the opportunity to be vaccinated. The president didn't tell us anything of that nature. And you expect me to take the promises again of the president? This is an emergency issue. This is measles. Every child between the ages of 0 to 5 is at risk at this moment. So it looks like, well, those who are either briefing him or he himself is not on top of issues. I mean, it's quite disappointing.
Right. Thank you very much, Honorable Akando. Honorable Akando says he's not so satisfied with the kind of responses that the man gave. Let me speak to Honorable Farouk. I'll come to a member of the Finance Committee. I mean, are you satisfied with some of the responses the president has been given on the stage?
I'm so disappointed, but I'll state only 2 disappointments. The first has to do with the vaccines, the shortage of vaccines in this country. Our children are dying, and we expected the president to give some assurance. In this country, when a politician tells you that steps are underway without stating clearly what steps there are, that politician is not telling the truth.
So let me put what he has just said.
Let me finish the point. You see, the president acknowledged. Please let me finish. The president acknowledged that there is shortage of vaccines. What everybody in this country was expecting to hear was specific steps that they have taken to ensure that we have vaccines. I was expecting the president to tell us that we are so far into procurement, and so we should expect vaccines in this country within this time frame. For him to only tell us steps are underway, you know politicians and their words. That vague response tells us that nothing has been done. Secondly, The president, as at now, no, let me make my point. I'm being called here. The president is still refusing to take responsibility for the mess that he has put this economy in, and still blaming Russia, Ukraine, and COVID. And when he mentioned roads and all that, I think that the president is confused between Chebi and Ghana. He's thinking that Chebi is Ghana, but Chebi is not Ghana.
Thank you, Honorable Slide. Your colleagues in the NDC say that the president did not say anything and that he's refusing to take responsibility. Is that a sense you get by listening to this president?
But if you were in the chamber or yourself, you were listening or you were watching the president, it's obvious that the minority, whoever says the president did not say anything, perhaps was not paying attention or perhaps was dozing off. Otherwise, you wouldn't say the president has not said anything. I will entreat them to go for the script and take a time to read through the script, and they will know the president had indeed made statements that are pertinent to the state of our economy as it is today. He's talking about vaccines. The president has said steps are underway, that in a couple of weeks, the vaccines will be delivered. He even went on to say this August House has passed a bill for vaccine to be manufactured in this country, that in future we will not have to rely on importation of vaccines into our economy. And so the president didn't say anything. It's not even.
They want specific timelines. Next week, tomorrow.
Please, I mean that's unfortunate to say that next week, tomorrow. The president has ministers, and the minister had briefed this house yesterday, committee of a whole. And all the information they want in terms of specificity, the Minister of Health yesterday delivered it to this August House. So the president had summed it up to say in a couple of weeks the vaccines will be delivered. And the president had made emphatic statement that nobody had lost his life, his or her life, as a result of measles or the lack of the vaccines currently in our country. So for me, if you are saying the president didn't say anything, perhaps they were not listening or they were dozing off. Otherwise, the president has said a lot of things. The president made an emphatic statement that the economy is on a process of recovery. The president has admitted that we are in crisis, but even in our crisis, we put in place measures and steps to recover our economy. And that is a fantastic statement.
Thank you very much, Honorable Slide. Just let me speak to the Honorable Minister for Lands. Honorable, your NDC colleagues have said that the president did not say anything. He did not own up. He did not. Is that the same sense you get listening to the president today?
Well, I think first of all, what happened today, in my view, was very refreshing in the sense that the president was very candid to the country. He was absolutely candid to the country, and there was a lot of clarity of thoughts and vision. And he gave a very clear background as to where we've come from all this while and where we are and where he, in his estimation, we're going to take the country to. When you are leader of a country, as he is, first of all, what you require is candor, is to be candid to the people, to tell the people the truth, to be transparent and to be accountable to the people. I think that first ingredient in the president's speech was absolutely encouraging, that he told the people as it is, that we inherited an economy and built it and had single-digit inflation, as he pointed out, at 7.5%, had one of the fastest economic growth, had a deficit of 5%, the first in 2 decades, and COVID and the Russian-Ukraine war got our economy out of gear. And secondly, and more importantly in my view, the president inspired a lot of hope. He inspired a lot of hope. And there is a sense of clarity as to where he's taking this country to, and the gamut of measures his government is implementing to ensure that we pull this country out of the current difficulties we find ourselves in. For me as a Ghanaian, and I don't speak on this occasion as a minister, for me as a Ghanaian, that is what you require from your president. And finally, I think also, is the point that the president made about the need for us to count our blessings. I think that is also absolutely important, because as we do know, and you can verify that, in some countries today, even common foodstuffs, you will not find them in supermarkets. In Nigeria, there are queues at the fuel station. In South Africa, there is massive power interruptions, doomsday in South Africa of all places. And in several countries, there is famine as a result of the global economic situation we find ourselves in. But mercifully in Ghana, through the stewardship of President Akufo-Addo and his government and our collective efforts, we have not gotten ourselves in such precarious situation. And finally, and above all, I think also the call for unity, that clarion call for unity, where the president sought to rally the country behind his vision and behind the Ghana project. I think today is a great day to be Ghanaian. As the president quite rightly pointed out, we have difficulties. The government is not shaking responsibility. The government is not closing its eyes to those things. The government is facing the realities of our time, that there are difficulties the Ghanaian people are going through. There are challenges which are confronting our country. But by and large, we have a government that is on top of the machine, that has a grip of the situation. And in a not too distant future, the government will fix the situation and pull this country out of the doldrums and take us back to the era of economic growth and bring relief to the masses of our people. I am very encouraged by the president's plan.
Thank you very much. Let me speak to the minority chief whip. Honorable, what is your response to some of the issues the president has been raising today?
Very disappointing. He basically fulfilled the constitutional requirement to make a statement in Parliament. He failed to take advantage of the situation to tell us the specific steps he's going to take, especially to cut back on the frivolous expenditures. I'm most shocked and disappointed in the president for attempting once again to clear wrongdoers in his government. Everybody knows we had situations where, for instance, a DC in the northern region suggested she was given an amount of money, her party people were given an amount of money from the COVID fund. We are expecting an independent investigations into these things. Once again, the president took the wind out of the sail before the investigation by pretending that he has cleared all those wrongdoings already. The president never even spoke about corruption. He rather actually more or less endorsed what some of these people are doing. When it comes to the substantive issues, he said things again that are totally false. Show me an airport in Ghana that MPP built in the last 6 years. None. They came to meet the Kumasi Airport project and are continuing. I commend them for continuing that. They came to meet the Tamale Airport project. They are continuing to complete it. I commend them for that. But you haven't built any airport. The airport they promised was the Central Regional Airport. They are still doing feasibility. Well, he attempted to walk back by saying that he's brought a new data on the so-called road they've built. The last time you and I checked, only 68 kilometers of roads were the new roads he's built. As we speak, I don't have that data that he's laid. When it gets to us, we'll discuss it. But he basically fulfilled his constitutional requirement. I haven't heard him say anything that gives hope to the teacher in Adaklu. I haven't seen him say anything that gives hope that he's going to downsize his government and cut back on frivolous expenditure.
Honorable, still related to this address, today your party has put out a statement asking all your MPs to stay in Parliament from now to the end of the month. What is the state of play?
Well, the party in their own wisdom feel that members of Parliament are elected to be in Parliament when Parliament is in session. When we are on break, we can work in our constituencies. Currently, we have serious businesses on the floor. As a whip, I'm struggling to whip my colleagues to be in the chamber and to prosecute government business. The way to do it is to make it easier for colleagues to stay in the chamber. The party feels the way to do it is to stop some of the disturbances in their backyard so that they can focus on the work here. And when we go on recess, then we can all go back and do whatever is required.
Yeah, suspended campaigns. It appears there's something big that the party is expecting to happen on the floor. What big issues are coming up?
Nothing big, just to make sure that members of Parliament, as elected, remain on the floor and do what is required of members of Parliament.
Thank you very much, Chief. Honorable, I have a message for you on your WhatsApp about PM Express today. Please look at it for me. Yeah, okay. So, Honorable Farouk Ali Bahama and then Honorable MP for Sagneri Gwedi, Alaji Ebi Hussein. Honorable, your colleagues in the NEC say this message was empty. Yesterday when I spoke to you, you said that you spread a message of hope.
Yes.
Have you gotten that today?
Yes, I've gotten a message of hope because as a leader, the President of the Republic has not shied away from the fact that all is well. He started by eating a humble pie, by accepting that times are difficult. And when times are difficult, it means that he should not run away from his people. The president has given the assurance that he knows that there are challenges, but starting from the first term of his as a president, he exposed the achievements of what he's done in terms of the health sector, the educational sector, the road sector, and all these achievements have never been achieved in the Fourth Republic. So we must appreciate the president's commitment to saying that He has done a lot, but if today times have become difficult, it doesn't mean that he's not done anything. And him accepting that obviously times will be better, meaning that he's a president who accepts criticism and ready to reposition. He has given hope because he's saying that we have done it before. We took the IMF from John Mahama when we took over. The president and the team and the economic management team and the vice president returned us back from IMF. Today, the president has exposed the involvement of the vice president, Dr. Baumia, the electronic Baumia, by having a vaccine in the drone center across the world. This is an innovation. This is very, very critical to the people of Ghana.
Is it fair to keep going back and saying that the IMF war, Ukraine war, people are saying that why the government is not taking responsibility, they are blaming other people?
No, but is it the first government to say that, my brother? Other governments have gone through this. Ghana is not the only country that is going through this. So let us be frank in whatever we are doing. Let us accept our facts as a leader. And the president has said that he will reposition and make sure we get the needed hope that we need. And obviously, very soon after the IMF, when we come back, we would give hope to Ghana. And that is how he's appealing to Ghana. He's not saying that all is well. He has accepted and he's saying that he has a president that is ready to accept the challenge and give hope to the people. And I've gotten the hope that I expect from the president by eating the humble pie. The humble pie is that he's saying that yes, all is not good. And is it every politician or government who admit that? And we should applaud our president for that. And I thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Farouk Aliyu Mama. Let me speak to Honorable Ebie Kuseni. I also speak to Honorable Delasu. Honorable, your colleagues in the NPP have said that the president was just candid with the state of the economy. Do you get a sense?
My brother, the job that he had to do here was not just coming to be candid with Ghanaians. Ghanaians expected him to provide them with at least a glimmer of hope. This is one of the most hopelessly uninspiring speeches I've ever heard from a president. I mean, the president has virtually nailed put a nail in the coffin of the people on their suffering. He didn't provide a glimmer of hope. Look, for you to say the poor holding on the IMF, this is a government that was in a hurry to celebrate their exit from the IMF. My brother, I'm sure you remember, they organized a KK party at the Ministry of Finance to celebrate their exit from the IMF. So if the IMF is so evil and cannot help us economy-wise, why are you in a hurry to go back to the institution you are running away from?
Briefly, let me take...
So I'm just indicating to you that the people expected him to provide, not to go back and load us with lamentations as to where you... And even today, Russia, Ukraine. So as long as this war continues, you continue to blame our economy on the war, because the war is not ending anytime soon. Nobody knows where the war will end.
Thank you very much.
And what Ghanaians are expecting, you see, in terms of crisis, that is where you see the true character of a leader. He should have undertaken one to cut down on the size of his government. People have complained that the government is still too large. Cut down on the size of government and send a signal to the people that you are willing to make some sacrifices.
Thank you.
Cut down on your extravagance. Okay? Show some modicum of modesty
in governance.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so Alhaji Ebie Kuseni does not seem to feel like he saw that. Honorable Delasu, I say, but let me go first to the Deputy Minister designate. Them have said that your president was simply blaming other people for the challenges of the economy. Do you accept that?
Of course, definitely no. But you know, in opposition, one would have expected what they are saying. The fact is that the president was very humble enough to accept the fact that there is crisis, but the crisis is global. And even underpin his statement by the statement made by the IMF boss, that Ghana was doing so much well to COVID and the war, which we did not anticipate. The president also used the opportunity to inject confidence into the system, and also let Ghanaians understand the fact that the resources that under him we have been able to inure, we use them for the betterment of this country, and stated a number of relevant achievements that under his leadership we are able to chalk, including even the railway sector. But at the end of the day, once you are in opposition, MPP being opposition would have done say, let's be very honest.
So our colleagues are criticizing just because they are opposition. They are criticizing just for criticizing sake, and it's not because of any real thing. It's because they're in opposition. They have to do that.
Have I said that to you? No, that's your statement. No, it's your statement. Okay. So if you want to say that, fine. But I'm saying that you don't expect opposition members to come and praise the government. And truly there's hardship. Who doesn't know there's hardship? But truly it is global. UK today, 46 years now, they have never experienced the hardship in terms of prices of goods and services. Inflation, go and check. Ambulances are on strike, nurses, magistrate court, everywhere in the world. So we accept that and show empathy. That is what the president did. But the president also gave hope and said that going forward, he believes that with the help of God and the hard work and the fiscal policies that are being actually redefined to consolidate the fiscal space, we will see something at the end of the tunnel. And that is the most important thing.
Yes. Thank you very much. And I wish you all the best. Thank you. Honorable Delasua, I spoke to you early on before the president delivered the message. Were you satisfied with what you got?
The president didn't disappoint me. The only disappointment I had, or the only surprise, was when he took time to congratulate the women for celebrating International Women's Day. That was something I didn't expect, so that is the one I give him kudos for. But everything else I expected him to do, he did it. I expected him to defend corruption, he did it. I expected him to blame everybody else but himself, he did it. I expected him not to tell the truth, he did it. I expected him not to say the real figures in inflation and all that, he did it. So everything I knew he would do, he did it. He didn't disappoint me in that vein at all. Yes.
Right. All right. Honorable, thank you very much.
He found time to jab his own Auditor General that there was no recklessness or there was no corruption. I found that very strange.
Very strange.
And then also, he found time to criticize the diplomats who made any comments against his government, forgetting that John Benjamin, the former British High Commissioner, did much more than that. That time he never commented. Now he's saying that this is the first that this has happened. It's not true. The only thing we can say he is the first for is the first president to take us from 120 billion in debt to over 500 billion in debt. That one, he has the record for it. But everything else, pretending as if he's the only one who has done this, he's the only one who has done that, that is very, very unfortunate. It's inaccurate.
Thank you very much, Honorable Delasua. MP for Kwando. Let me speak to Honorable Kwabena Danko. Honorable Gakpe is also here, and then another Honorable Member of Parliament. So, yes, Honorable Kwabena Danko, are you satisfied with some of the things the President has spoken about today? Did he paint the real state of the nation today?
I believe today was a missed opportunity. He delved too much in the past, the pre-COVID period, and also an attempt to justify COVID expenditure. But that is not really where we ought to have been. This is the State of the Nation address. I expected that he would tell us exactly where we are today. And everybody knows that we are in dire straits now. And I expected a lot more as to how we will move from where we are today into the brighter future we all want to see. There was very little of that. The mechanism to move us from where we are today to where we want to be, for me, that was a missing link.
But what do you say about the President saying that there was nothing wrong in that COVID-19 audit report? He says that his finance minister, the health minister, adequately responded to the queries.
The Constitution mandates the Auditor General to audit and issue a report. The Auditor General is about the best person to comment on those expenditures. His comments, his report is in the public domain, and he has had reason to challenge various aspects of expenditure. Ineffective use, inefficient use, misuse, etc. If the Auditor General says there is much to be desired on COVID-19 expenditure, no person under the Constitution is mandated to say anything to the contrary. If you are not happy with the Auditor General's report, you go to court to challenge the report. That has not been done. I don't think it's His Excellency's place to try to wipe clean a slate that the Auditor General says is not clean.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kwabena Danko. Honorable Mutala is here, Honorable Gakpe too is here. Honorable Gakpe, what is your reaction to today's President's statement? He says that the economy is in a bit of a difficulty, but they are trying to work things around. Were you satisfied?
I'm not satisfied. It's a missed opportunity for the President. This is the State of Nation address. Why is the President not talking about the debts that we owe, 600 billion?
And as I speak to you, every Ghanaian owes 20,000 Ghana cedis. He's not talking about that. And the debt to GDP is about 103%. Government is not mentioning that. And then what shocked me is that the president trying to be an auditor of the COVID fund. Is he an auditor? What is happening instead of him to actually support the Auditor General's report so that we go into it. Those who we punish them. But the president is trying a nice way to cover up for the people. And I think that is bad. That is bad. And if you continue that way, look at how the status of our economy today. So for me, there is no hope for this country. So long as the president turning himself to be an auditor general, that is why I have the beef with the president.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kami Bakwe. Let me speak to Honorable Murtala Ibrahim Mohammed. Honorable, some of your NDC colleagues seem to have painted a picture as though the president lied to the nation on the true state of the nation. Hey, that cannot be right.
For a moment, I thought I was watching Cartoon Network. And I want you to tell me, didn't you see the palpable lies that the president was peddling there? SONA is State of the Nation's address. The Constitution expects you to tell us the true state of Ghana, regardless how bitter the state is. It cannot be rosy all the time. The least the people of this country expected from the president was to come there and peddle such legendary falsehood. As a matter of fact, the president said that he hasn't borrowed reckless, and that what he has borrowed, there are projects to show. I'm not going to talk about Northern Ghana or Northern Region or Tamale Central. I'm going to talk about Accra, a place you and I all know. President Mahama borrowed a little over 40 billion. He took our debt at 80 billion, a little over 80 billion to a little over 120 billion. So it means that he borrowed a little over 40 billion. This government has borrowed over 400 billion. Out of the 40 billion President Mahama borrowed, the University of Ghana Medical Center is out of it. The airport terminal 3 is out of it. As a matter of fact, the circle interchange is out of the 40 billion. The Rich Hospital is out of the 40 billion. The regional hospitals across the country are all out of the 40 billion. The Eastern Corridor, which they abandoned, is out of the 40 billion. Isn't it shocking to you that the East Legon bypass, the total contract sum was a little over $5 million. They abandoned this project, and the state is now spending close to $50 million to execute same. If this is not reckless borrowing, tell me which is. Now, I have just mentioned the things President Mahama did in Accra, which you and I can all see. Could you mention some of the few things they claim they did? As a matter of fact,
there's the
contract for Obechebe Lamte and Pokwasi were all procured under the NDC, and they are all part of the debt portfolio. When you go in for loan, in the contract, the loan is given. In calculating the debt, all those projects were part. So tell me what they have done with this money. Yet the president also told us that 1D1F has created so many jobs. If this is not insulting the integrity of the people of this country, what is it? Now, if you are industrializing, it means that the economy is supposed to grow. And when the economy expands, jobs will be created. Why is it that the so-called 1D1F, which is supposed to create jobs, unemployment is escalating? They took unemployment from NDC at 6.8%. Today, the census that was done put the unemployment at 17.4%. They took inflation at 15% to 54%. Debt to GDP was a little over 60%. And people said, hey, everything was so bad. Today it is over 100%. In fact, it was 104%. As a matter of fact, the CD to the dollar was 3.7. Today, what is the CD to the dollar? So I'm saying that if it has to do with what they have delivered, we have never had a disappointing government than this. The only people whose conditions of lives have improved, perhaps, are the Oforiates. And that is why I said in the serious country, this president would have feigned illness so that he would have prevented himself from this embarrassment. But you see, he's a very courageous person, even in the eyes of peddling such falsehood. I was shocked that the president didn't find a little space in his heart to at least express sympathy and empathy for the people of Ashama, citizens of this country, who were brutalized by men in uniform who have sworn an oath to defend and protect. A military officer was barbarously murdered, which we all condemn. The police had commenced investigation to establish those who engaged in that heinous crime. Now, out of nowhere, you have armed military men. When you watch the clips, it is a reminiscence of what happens in Gaza Strip. It's a reminiscence of what happens in war-torn areas. And you have a deputy minister for defense who had the courage to justify that action. Look, no one can tell me that President Nana Addo didn't sanction what happened in the Shama. He's the commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces. The military are under the control of the political appointees, in this case, the Minister for Defense. Except that someone is telling me that the military have gotten out of hand and they can do anything they want to do. And the fact that a deputy minister for defense could justify their action, President Nana Addo knew. But you see, I was thinking that he would find some little space in his heart to show sympathy and apologize to the people of Ashama. I guess there isn't any space of empathy and sympathy left in his heart. If there were spaces left, he would have condemned the killing of innocent Ghanaians at Techiman, which occasioned he becoming the president of the Republic of Ghana today.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mutala. Honorable, what are your reactions to the State of the Nation address?
Well, thank you, my brother. I am unimpressed about the SONA delivered by the
I also have the Eastern Regional Minister here. Yes. I'll go to him shortly.
Yeah, I'm not impressed about the President's State of Nations address because the President missed the opportunity to be candid with Ghanaians. The President should have been so open and accept responsibility that, please, this country, he and his economic management team, they've grounded the economy, they didn't do well, you take responsibility. If you look at corruption, the President did not talk about it. He rather, in the area of, for instance, COVID fund, that many people know that these funds were misappropriated, these funds were misapplied, COVID fund went to party executive coffers, yet, and this can be testified from the Auditor General reports on COVID report. Yet the President says that COVID fund was spent very well. So he wasn't honest to the people of this country. He hasn't carried the Ghanaian along. There's no hope. The only hope that left for the Ghanaian is the 2024 election when we return President Mahama.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Honorable, do you get the same sense that the President did not preach anymore?
I don't at all. 2024 is somewhere 38 months away. Let us admit that. Can you stop for me? Or be live show. Somewhere, some way or somehow, certain people are expecting some narrative. And once they don't hear that narrative, then whatever the President said is no news. To my surprise, I ask and I'll keep asking, is it a situation that at the end of the month, some paychecks did not go through? Is it a situation that we are experiencing some erratic behavior of our energy sector? We are not having consistent power? Are we sleeping in darkness? Are factories being closed down? Are production offices like media houses like yourselves being closed down and spending on ends on alternative fuel to generate power to run your businesses? No. I say that is the state of the economy. The President was so wise in choosing certain thematic areas to report on our daily happenings and engagements.
President Akufo-Addo.
So there's a debate already starting on the state of the nation. I'm pretty sure throughout this week we will hear a lot of those. One of the traditional things that we expect to happen is the minority holding a press conference to deliver their own state of the nation address to us. Kojo Yankson and Winston asked will be in the studio. So we've heard the parliamentarians, trying to have their say. This will be debated from tomorrow. So we'll get to hear a bit more. So let's come to the studio. First of all, let's start from the basis, Kojo. Did the speech meet your expectations?
In many ways it did, and in a few ways it didn't. It did meet my expectation because I certainly expected the President to put the very best possible face on the state of the nation. I think that's traditional. So he went through, first of all, by defining the terms of engagement, suggesting that this will mainly focus on the economy, as he's aware that that is the biggest talking point. What that did was it allowed him to skirt certain issues which you might not ascribe directly to the economy. For example, issues to do with his finance minister and all the scandal around whether or not he should remain finance minister. He was able to skirt issues like what recently happened in Ashaiman.
But he didn't scare, he didn't mention it at all.
He just completely avoided it.
Yeah.
And maybe the fact that he said this would focus on the economy gave him a certain license to set some of these issues aside. But that is unfortunate because his comments were directly up to date. He talked about vaccines, which is a matter that is ongoing today. You know, we're discussing it in newsrooms today.
Yeah.
So if he had wanted to touch on Ashaiman, he could have, but he didn't. And then, of course, when he talked about the economy, he changed the game again. Instead of giving us the state of the nation for 2023, he suggested that perhaps the only way to do that is by going all the way back to before COVID, 2019, you know, and talking about how, as the IMF director is his witness, the economy was going well until COVID came along, you know, and so it appears that what he really needed to do was paint a positive picture. That was his goal, his ambition by the end of this process, to paint a positive picture of a situation that is not positive. Okay, now the only way to do that is by omitting facts and by embellishing and making things look nicer than they really are. So that appeared to be a lot of, well, what he did in this speech. He talked about the update with the IMF. He said that we can expect them to submit their deal to the IMF by the end of this month. Whether that will immediately result in the IMF approving this $3 billion line of credit, we don't know. But he also said that apart from going to the IMF, there are other things that the government wants to do with the aim of improving our economy and bringing us out of this. So he talked about a 5-member cabinet committee that he has set up to look into improving our exports and substituting a lot of our imports. He talked about plans to increase per capita GDP from $2,500 per person to $4,500 by 2030. Again, setting goals not for himself, because he certainly will not be president in 2030. He's only got just a little over a year to go. But again, you see him setting targets, you know, well beyond his mandate. He said fuel prices are high, but at least these days they go down as well as up. You know, and he touted that as an achievement. Now,
then he says that we should expect the price reductions
now that
soon to reflect
oil is coming.
Yeah, to reflect in people's pockets.
Absolutely.
And then he links it to transport fares, which I thought was very bold because the GPLT had said very clearly that they must hit a certain threshold in terms of reduction to trigger corresponding for transport fare reductions.
But quite cleverly, he says, look, prices go down as well as up. So if your transport fares are not going up, don't look at me. You know, and then of course he made mention of something I thought was very interesting. He said there has been extraordinary expenditure on security at our borders. Okay, he said, look, we have no choice. We absolutely have to protect our borders in these times. Then he listed a lot of equipment that has been purchased for the military as well as the police. So you see, he did mention the military. He did talk about the military. If he had wanted to touch on the most recent event, he could have. So it becomes more and more likely that the president made a choice not to talk about Ashaiman. Now that will come up in its own way in the upcoming debates, you know, as various sides, engage. Oh, he said something quite interesting. He said there's been some good news, construction of about 120 courthouses and judges' accommodations. And as soon as he finished saying that, he said, oh, but actually 60 of them are complete. The rest are in various, at various levels of completion. He talked about STEM schools. I was excited to hear about that. Somebody turned down Motown to go to a STEM school, and the president thought that was worth commenting on. I don't know how Motown old students will feel about that. But look, I think for me, the biggest issues are the ones that were not mentioned. Whether the president did this by design or not. That's up for debate. But absolutely clear in its absence was the National Cathedral. Nothing whatsoever on that.
Okay, so stay with me, Kojo. I want to go back to Kweku Asante, who is speaking to St. George in Parliament.
The president was clueless as to what the state of the Ghanaian economy is. I would use you, my very good friend, as a typical example. Let us assume that your salary is 2,000 Ghana cedis. In 2020, and I'm using 2020 as a reference point because the president did a lot of macroeconomic indicators from 2020. In 2020, if your salary was 2,000 Ghana cedis, and at that time, a bag of cement was 25 cedis, you could have bought 80 bags of cement with your salary. Today, a bag of cement is 92 cedis. So with your same 2,000 Ghana cedis, you can barely buy 25 bags. So are you better off or worse off? The president came here and without shame came to say that we should roll out the National Orchestra and the National Dance Ensemble and have a festival of chiefs to sing praises to him that we don't have fuel queues and we are buying fuel at 13 cedis because just last year it was 20 cedis. When he took over office in 2017 from the man he called incompetent, the savior who is coming back, John Dramani Mahama, how much was a gallon of fuel, which was 4.5 liters? It was 14 cedis. So 14 cedis for 4.5 liters. And today you say we should roll out the red carpet for you because we are buying at 13 cedis for a liter under you. How shameless can you be?
Are you surprised you didn't hear anything about Ashaman in the speech?
Because the president is the biggest beneficiary of violence in this country. I have been saying this from before he became president. People said I disrespected the president. The president was complicit in the murder of 8 Ghanaian citizens in the 2020 election for his re-election. And that is why when the president came here in 2021 to deliver the State of the Nation's address, he refused to mention the murder of 8 citizens in Techiman, in Ablekuma Central, in Odododio, because he benefited from it. Today, the president is commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Your taxes, my taxes, were used to fuel an Air Force helicopter, fuel armored personnel carriers, and carry men of the Ghana armed forces to go and wreak havoc on innocent citizens of Ashaman. The president doesn't think it is necessary to speak. In fact, he endorses the violence. And this is a man who was touted as a defender of human and civil liberties. And you see, the media must be careful. You are always on the field doing reportage. You don't know the next time the military will go berserk in another community and you'll be caught. Any of us could have been in Ashaman yesterday. Any of us could have been there. This is the president who starts his speech by saying that we have the highest level of freedoms of speech. The president has short memory. The president's memory is failing him. Because if the president's memory is not failing him, he will remember that on the 31st of January last year, just last year, he summoned the diplomatic corps to Peduasi and warned them, gave them a stern warning. 31st of January, go and check. Peduasi, that they should stop engaging in local issues and dabbling in our local discourse. The president very angrily warning the diplomatic community. 31st of January last year. Then he's here this year saying that,
he actually said today that the free speech is so much that even foreign diplomats can comment on national issues.
I'm telling you, last year he warned them. But if you want to see foreign diplomats, a president who was tolerant of foreign diplomats, were you in this country when there was a certain UK ambassador called John Benjamin? John Benjamin went to Occupy Ghana programs and criticized the sitting president. Occupy Ghana was a vehicle for President Akufo-Addo's campaign. Have you seen any diplomats come on an NDC platform? No. If the German ambassador says to you that you carried your 2 left legs to the German ambassador to go and beg him that he should go and beg China for you to forgive you debt, and he says to you that, look, I will do it for you, but before I go and beg for forgiveness, reduce the size of your government. How is that insulting, or how is that disrespectful? You are a beggar with arrogant pride.
Right, Honorable, before I let you go, your party has a statement out today asking all MPs to stay in Parliament and work from now to the end of the month. They say that you should not travel. If you are traveling, it must be declared and all that. Those who have traveled must come down. What exactly is going to happen within then and now that the party is taking such an unprecedented step?
The party statement called it what? Operation Save Democracy. So our democracy is under threat with an electoral commission that is rogue, that has gone rogue, and an electoral commissioner who has become a teen god and thinks that she's the best thing to happen to Ghanaians since Ben's bread, and who thinks that she can run riots in this country and do whatever she wants because she has the blessings of a president who is ruling like a despot. But Parliament remains the last bastion of democracy, and the minority in Parliament remains the last hope in that bastion of democracy. And so we are going to sacrifice our campaigns as members of Parliament for our re-election in our party to ensure that there is actually a democracy come 2024. Because if you leave this electoral commissioner, my own sister Gina Dukwe Mensah, I mean, I am appalled where we are headed for. You know, the arrogant posturing of the EC. And you see, if you know what you are doing and you are arrogant about your knowledge, we can forgive your arrogance. But when you are so inept and clueless and don't understand what you are doing by running the electoral commission on an ad hoc basis, you have Bosman Asari speaking at ends and crosses with himself, saying things he doesn't even have a clear understanding of from an IT perspective. You have an electoral commission that came here, and the basis on which they wanted to introduce a new CI is to remove the guarantor system, and the basis for which they are doing that is to rely on the Ghana card. If you know.
And that's Parliament still debating the President's State of the Nation address. I have my own debate in the studio. Let me bring in Winston. Winston, so the President delivered. We started off by talking about some of the key things that was said and wasn't said. First of all, I guess I need to measure it. Going into this, what were you expecting him to say? What was the, I guess, priority areas for you?
Well, I mean, I said on air this morning that I was expecting the President, to say something that would give all of us hope. The fact such as cutting down the size of his government, cutting down expenditure. I wasn't expecting the President to do the things that he did last year, more like a campaign platform. The reason I said these things in the morning was because it's very simple. We are in difficult times. You have the opportunity as the leader of the country to carry all of us along with you. Okay? So when you admit that times are hard, for instance, today, when the President said he was going to focus on the economy, you didn't expect the President to tout the things I did in the past, but for COVID-19 and Russia, Ukraine. No, these are things we know. You've talked about them already. The reality is that when the economy was handed over to you in 2019, post-IMF program, we were warned by end of the year 2019, before COVID-19, that we were at high risk of debt distress. So this is not something that we did not know. We knew all of these things. And I find it disheartening that consistently we reduce everything to what I did and what you did not do. What I know, what you know. In fact, I said this morning that I was expecting the President to focus on the next generation and not on the next election. Because that's been his, that's one of the things he said consistently, that I want to focus on the next generation and not on the next election. If you're focusing on the next generation, for instance, you have an opportunity to tell us, one, when children are lacking vaccines, you don't repeat the health minister's statement that says there's been a decline in vaccination. Yes, that's something we know, but there are reasons why there's decline in vaccination globally. But we are facing shortages. So you see, globally, the decline in vaccination is not because they're probably facing shortage. Okay, it's because things have changed. It's because people are now beginning to focus on COVID-19, and we have vaccine, hesitancy. So that's not something that you are facing in this country. As for Ghana, people have gone. In fact, Benes was on the Small Morning Show today talking about her own experience. People are ready to have the vaccine, and they just cannot get it. It's different from saying that, people want it on it. Then you look at even the IMF program, for instance, that the President is talking about. He's talked about, the local, the domestic debt exchange. Fantastic. We're done with the domestic debt exchange. Listen to the President talk about the external exchange program, where he says, I'm grateful to the Paris Club and I'm grateful to China for their commitment. Their commitment. Now, he says he's met the Chinese, they're talking about their commitment to setting up a credit committee to look at all of these things. Fine. But if I am a market watcher, how does this really give me the kind of confidence I need? Okay, they're talking about setting up a committee, but with a committee, all things being equal, finish its job and get the deal. I know we could actually get an IMF deal, by end of this month. I know we can get an IMF deal by end of this month. Also because our situation is that bad that the IMF can just not allow us to sink. Our situation in this country, it is so bad that if the IMF allows us to sink, it would affect the sub-region. And so the IMF itself is trying so much. Look, the China situation, let me just say that today. that China says is geopolitics. The West is also making China look bad. If China doesn't agree, it would look bad. So China also finds itself in a very difficult situation because everybody is talking about, you reduce your expenditure. Yes, why do you want us to help you when you don't want to reduce your expenditure and all of that, which is very instructive, which is very important. But the geopolitics is such that China is being pushed into a very tight corner today that China may probably look back and say, let's just allow it to go. Afterwards, how much? 1.7 billion.
But that's a danger, right? In all this, it's also possible that Ghana is now being used as a pawn in this global geopolitical conflict between the West and Russia. Of course. But that places us in the... Of course. And I think also the government had not played their cards well in this because we had almost thrown in all our eggs in the basket of the West. Yeah. When it came to Ukraine and our stand, we possibly the one African country that has been the most blistering in condemning Russia. At a time when you know your survival strings are attached to their backer in China.
We have pretended to be big boys.
But you see,
when actually we are still beggars. You know, that's really what we are suffering from right now. Where we are beggars, we acted like we were big boys. Talked Ghana beyond aid and talked about, and acted like we are speaking truth to power when Macron visited and did all of these things that were posturing and didn't back it with action. Mm-hmm. So now suddenly, when we are exposed as beggars again, we are at the absolute whim of the giants once again. And we talked ourselves into that position.
Look, let me tell you one other thing. I mean, when it comes to the IMF deal, one of the things we may have done very well. Our leaders have actually played the game so well. They've played it so well that today, the IMF actually feels that it will be a failure if they don't give us a deal. Okay? The world is now beginning to see it more like it will be a failure on the world's part if they don't give Ghana a deal. Yeah. Because of where we've gotten to. And also, I've talked about that already. Then let's look at one major factor. Cutting down expenditure. And the German ambassador was spot on. You were asking me, and you see, the German ambassador spot on, former Chief Justice Sophia Akuffo, I just love that woman. Spot on. You telling us today, Evans, today after exchanging, are you aware that there are Ghanaians who exchanged their monies for bonds under the financial sector cleanup, who were not paid 1 cedi in the whole of 2022? Mm-hmm. In this house, there are people like that in this house. Mm-hmm. Well, 1 cedi, you are not paid. 1 cedi, they were not paid. In 2022, the finance minister told us, when we asked them, so what is the amount of savings that you got from the the reduction in fuel coupons, the cutting down of political appointee salary by 30%, how much savings did you make? There was a committee formed to go and tell us how much savings have been made. Evans, has the committee told you how much savings have been made? So you see, if I am a market watcher, when the government comes in, and the Individual Bondholders Forum and Individual Bondholders Association of Ghana, to how we could save in excess of 80 billion from even the 2023 budget. That's what we are saying, we're spending in excess of 200 billion Ghana cedis, of which we're borrowing 60 billion. Look, I was expecting the president to come and tell all of us, after the distinguished former Chief Justice had said, when you say how have you helped yourself? And when you say you have borrowed, what have you done with it? The president said we have constructed road. See, the 10,000 kilometers of road that the president talks about, for instance, it's important we know what constitutes the 10,000 kilometers of road. Over 1,500 asphalt overlay, or is it the feeder routes in excess of 6,000 that the president talks grading of routes? That's the routes that we spent. We borrowed money to fix.
We need to wrap up, but on the part of the talking about challenges with the debt and the diplomatic community, there was a jab that that I liked. Yeah. Because of the mischievous way it was delivered, and I know you like mischief.
I love jabs, right? More than any boxer I know. So listen, it was quite instructive that he linked it to freedom of expression, right? So he was touting what he considers to be a plus of his administration. Yeah. That there is so much freedom of speech right now that even diplomats, are joining in and making comments that would have been problematic if a diplomat made in their country. I don't know what he means by that, because here in Ghana, diplomats have been speaking their mind for a very long time.
One of the MPs actually made the point.
Exactly. Long before he became president, did we not have Ian Walker, John Benjamin, who have we had a diplomat like him since? You know, so it was interesting that he made that comment, of course, in light of the recent comment by the German, the German ambassador. But ask yourself this. If he felt a need to make a jab in response to that comment, then where's the president's head right now? What is he thinking? Somebody says, cut down expenditure. He thinks that the person is saying things that he ought not say.
And this is a person whose country you've gone to beg, not only to forgive you, but to help you intercede on your behalf.
So you see, that's why I'm saying,
China.
Where is the president's head at right now when it comes to issues of size of government, which didn't come up in the entirety of his
he
speech.
was jabbing the person who tells him to cut.
So it tells you something. That look, we are not thinking about this crisis in the same way. Government and the people are not thinking about the crisis in the same way. Government is telling us that you have to make changes. You have to cut.
I have just a minute to wrap up.
But he's not going to do
Winston.
that.
Look, the president says they've not been reckless in borrowing. I don't have much time. But I'll tell you one thing they've been reckless in. They've been reckless in managing the exchange rate. Because if they had managed the exchange rate properly, okay, our external debt would not have ballooned. Because one, the moment the dollar appreciates against the cedi, in just 1 year, by 100%, your external debt is increased by 100%. That's where they've been reckless.
And then the securing vaccines become an issue.
Exactly.
By the way, that's it for our coverage of the State of the Nation address today. I'm pretty sure throughout the day, if you follow us here on the Joy News channel and across our many bulletins and our social media platforms at myjoyland.com, and many more reactions that you will find. This is the only place you want to be for everything State of the Nation. Thank you for joining us.